This is a domestic briefing right here on Topical 8 News. We're starting with a focus on politics. The federal government has announced the cancellation of the parade earlier scheduled to mark Nigeria's 65th independence anniversary on Wednesday, October 1st, citing the need for sober reflection rather than ceremony. In a statement by the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, it assured that other activities, including the presidential podcast, cultural programs, and the national campus debate, will go ahead as planned. SGF George Akuma said this year's theme, Nigeria at 65, all hands on deck for a greater nation, underscores collective responsibility in nation building, stressing that President Bola Tinubu's renewed hope agenda is already laying the groundwork for economic stability despite ongoing challenges. Now in international relations, China has announced plans to build Africa's first ever local insulin production facility in Nigeria, a move that could transform healthcare on the continent and improve access to life-saving diabetes medication. The groundbreaking initiative is expected to not only make insulin more affordable and widely available, but also position Nigeria as a pharmaceutical hub of West Africa. The project comes at a time when diabetes cases are rising sharply across Africa. According to the International Diabetes Federation, over 24 million adults in Africa currently live with diabetes, and the number is projected to reach 55 million by 2045 if preventive measures are not taken. Yet, despite the growing demand, insulin remains scarce and expensive in many parts of the continent. With these developments, Nigeria is set to take a leading role in addressing one of Africa's most urgent public health challenges. Moving to economy, Nigeria's tax system is undergoing its biggest transformation since independence, with the Federal Inland Revenue Service announcing that food, education, shared transportation and agriculture will now be exempt from value-added tax under new reforms. FRSC Chairman Zach Adediji said the changes simplify compliance, cut the number of tax types and relieve small businesses and low-income earners. President Bola Tinubu signed 4 major tax bills into law in June. Already, Nigeria's tax to GDP ratio has risen to 13.5% from 10% in 2 years, with revenues boosting state debt repayment and strengthening external reserves. The FRSC will also be renamed the Nigerian Revenue Service to reflect its broader role across all tiers of government. Adedeji described the reform as painful but necessary, stressing that interventions such as CNG buses and refinery support are cushioning the impact, while urging taxpayers to embrace the new system as a foundation for sustainable growth. Now on Labour, the Nigerian Labour Congress has directed all its affiliate unions to begin mobilization for a nationwide industrial action against the Dangote Group, accusing the corporation of union busting and gross anti-labor practices following the dismissal of over 800 refinery workers. The directive comes as Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria shut down operations at key oil and gas institutions on Monday, despite a National Industrial Court injunction restraining the union from halting crude and gas supply to the Dangote refinery.
According to the law, deduct their check-off dues. That's what the law requires. The Trade Union Act is very clear. These are laws of Nigeria. Deduct the check-off dues. Once you deduct the check-off dues, please ready to us as prescribed in the law. If the Nigerian economy is suffering today, Dangote should be held responsible.
NLC President Joe Ajaero described Dangote's action as a protracted anti-worker crusade and ordered unions to set up mobilization committees within 72 hours, warning that decisive action was inevitable to compel compliance within labor laws. While the Dangote Group insists the layoffs were part of restructuring to address sabotage and safety concerns, Pengasa argues that the move targeted unionizing workers. With the refinery central to Nigeria's energy security and foreign exchange stability, the standoff has raised concerns of nationwide fuel supply disruptions as organized labor prepares for what could become a full-scale confrontation with Africa's largest industrial corporation. More on labor, the Nigerian Union of Local Government Employees in Rivers State has directed its members to embark on a 7-day warning strike beginning midnight of September 30, 2025, in protest against the dismissal of over 300 staff of Emoha local government area by the council chairman, Dr. Chidi Lloyd. In a letter signed by State Secretary Sunday Aderinan and circulated to all officers and chapter chairmen across the 23 local government areas, the union described Lloyd's action as callous and unfair, particularly in denying affected workers their salaries. Consequently, all local government employees have been ordered to withdraw their service until further notice, with not urging full compliance in solidarity with affected staff. Now in education, The Academic Staff Union of Universities has given the federal government a 14-day ultimatum to meet its long-standing demands, warning that failures to act will trigger a 2-week warning strike, followed by a total and indefinite shutdown of universities, as the union decried government's neglect to the education sector after its next meeting at the University of Abuja. Now moving to security. The Federal Capital Territory Police Command has arrested 5 notorious banditry suspects linked to a series of kidnapping and armed robberies across the FCT and neighboring states. Spokesperson Josephine Ade said the suspects, tracked to Nasarawa State between September 28 and 28, were found in possession of 2 AK-47 rifles, a locally made pistol, 2,186 rounds of ammunition, and 5 operational motorcycles. The police confirmed the suspects confessed to their crimes and will be prosecuted while efforts continue to apprehend other fleeing accomplices. Commissioner of Police Ajo Adewale praised the gallantry of officers, assuring residents of sustained efforts to rid the FCT of criminal elements. Now in sports, FIFA's decision to award Lesotho a 3-0 victory over South Africa for fielding an illegible player has dramatically reshaped Group C of the 2026 World Cup African qualifiers, leaving Benin and South Africa tied on 14 points. Nigeria and Rwanda close behind on 11, and setting up a tense 4-nation race for the group's sole automatic tickets with just 2 matches left to play. That is the domestic news update. For now, on to Percolate News. Do stay with us for more domestic updates and development. I am Blessing Bassi.